Welcome to the LifeWorks Lives We Love podcast, an inspiring conversation with members of the LifeWorks community. We'll hear from a variety of fearless advocates for youth pursuing lives they love. Now, here's your host, LifeWorks CEO Susan McDowell.
Welcome to Lives We Love, a podcast about the people of LifeWorks. I'm excited today. I'm always excited. I'm really excited today because we have Lynn Sherman here. And Lynn is an attorney in town here in Austin, Texas, and a civic leader, the leader of many, many nonprofit and civic initiatives, which we can talk about today. But one of the reasons I'm so excited to have Lynn here today is there are people in your life who you think, if I hadn't known this person, or if this person hadn't come along and shown the right leadership at the right time, something wouldn't have happened. So we might think about that in terms of, if I hadn't met so-and-so, then I wouldn't have met my husband, or I wouldn't have had this job. If it weren't for Lynn, LifeWorks wouldn't exist. LifeWorks was the result of a four-way merger in 1998. Lynn, at the time, was the board chair for Child and Family Services, and I met him 2 years before that when basically Lynn had an idea. Lynn and a couple of other civic leaders like thinking Adrian Fowler, Libby Malone, had this idea that we could be really more for our community than the sum of four other organizations. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. Here on our 25th anniversary of LifeWorks, it's just a poignant time to have you on. But I'm going to start with a question that I ask everybody, which is, what are you doing right now in your life that brings you joy?
The answer to that's easy, and it's my recovery. It brings me joy on a daily basis. I've been in recovery 12 and a half years, and it has transformed my life. It's transformed the lives of people around me, and it gives me the chance to actually become involved with other people who were on a similar journey. And it's for all the nonprofit work that I have done over my life, which has been very rewarding, actually doing that one-on-one work with people working same type of principles in their own life is a gift. And so it's a very easy answer.
Every day, recovery is a new journey.
Deal, and it
new
is.
Journey every day. Yeah. And you said you've been in recovery 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years. Yeah.
That's great. We recently talked about this because we've worked together since, in one way or another, since 96.
Right.
We've done some pretty intense work together.
Sure
the founding of LifeWorks, which, I think for a period of 2 years was like a second job for both of us. So we've been through a lot. We went through Leadership Austin together. And, I had shared with you recently, my recovery, it's been 16 years now.
Golly.
And as close as we worked together, we didn't know that about each other.
Not at all.
And that's actually a regret I have in our relationship, that while we were struggling and those around us were struggling, we didn't
even know.
And I wish, a regret is I wish we could have been there for each other.
100%. That's what you look for particularly when you're first coming in, And I will tell you, we have another friend in common who kind of goes back to the same period of time, who I didn't know was in recovery until I decided that I wanted to go to my first meeting, and I received a call from him. He took me to my first meeting.
That's fantastic.
And what I wish that I'd had, to your point, relative to our relationship, I'd wish that I had known that you were there as well, because I needed that.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why I'm as active as I am, because I want to be that for other people. So it is a gift, right?
Yeah, it's a gift. And it's, even though we didn't know for a long time, it's a gift today because it is a daily journey. Mm-hmm. So we can be here for each other now.
That's true.
But I wish I had known at the time.
Likewise.
So okay. LifeWorks is 25 years old.
Yeah.
This year, let's talk a little bit about rewind to 96. What was your experience at that time and you were board chair of Child and Family Service, which was an organization that actually went back to 1910.
Yep.
So we are in fact one of the oldest nonprofits in Austin, right? So what were you seeing at that time that led you to this path?
And it actually goes back 2 years before that. Into 1994. In 1994, I was the incoming, as I recall, I was the incoming finance chair. He was either the finance chair or the incoming finance chair of Child and Family Service, which at the time was the largest recipient of United Way funds.
Oh, right.
It used to be Community Chest way back in the day.
Yep.
But they were, at the time, Child and Family Service was the largest recipient of United Way funds. And in 1994 and in 1995, United Way America was experiencing the William Aramone scandal. Which was, he was the CEO of United Way of America. There was a corruption charges. There was a big trial. He was found guilty. And giving to United Ways across the country plummeted. And as I recall, giving to United Way immediately fell something in the order of like 20%. And so as the incoming, or as the finance chair, I'm looking at things going, this could be a problem going forward, number one. And number two, we should not be that reliant on a single source of revenue, grant revenue. And so we started talking, and we said, we really need to figure out a way where we can become, we can diversify and become more relevant. And then that took us to a discussion about really try to create systems of care. And so who are we working with right now that, we could collaborate with, was how it ultimately began. And that started in the 94, 95 time frame. And I think you may have been I think you were a part of this. The executive directors, as I understand it, it wasn't necessarily in reaction to that. Y'all were already meeting to try to figure out how y'all could work better together. But it became more acute once we had that United Way reality and the reduction of funds. And there was a moment in there where at least on our board, we started talking and we decided that we knew y'all were talking about collaborations, and we finally kind of had indicated to our executive director what we really need to be talking about is anything's on the table, including a merger. And if y'all can get comfortable, the executive director group, I'd be interested to know your side.
Oh, yeah.
But on the executive director group of having those discussions, it's the entirety of the realm of possibility. Let's go try to make it work. That's my recollection.
Yeah. And I think we had a little bit of a parallel track going on, because I remember I was a brand new executive director, and I got a call from Don Loving, who was with Communities and Schools at the time, and said, hey, we're having, a bunch of us are having lunch over at my house. This was after Christmas. And what we want to talk about is generally there's got to be a better way of doing this, because what we were looking at was, the Clinton era welfare reform. We were looking at the transformation of public systems of care, right? So we got together, we had lunch, we thought, and then we had like another lunch just to kind of continue the conversation. At that point, Bob Bowman, who was with Child and Family Services, said, hey, my board leadership is really interested in us working more closely together, if that's what makes sense. And so at that point, we found some folks to sponsor some conversations, including, you remember, sending board and staff leadership to the Peter Drucker conference in San Francisco. And that created kind of some relationship and some synergy and some momentum. And honestly, we just started talking to people. I think, you probably spent half your waking hours just talking about this to community leadership. And, the very brand new St. David's Foundation, and I think it was even before they were kind of official, right?
Right,
and, threw in some money to continue the conversations, to get a little consulting support. And it just, it took off from there. But what you brought, and Libby and Adrian and Judy Manriquez and the whole Leadership Austin class of 1998, right?
Yep.
Was this kind of groundswell of leadership support that just gave us the momentum to keep moving in the direction and keep ourselves honest about what would be best for the community and best for the people in the community.
And what's interesting, the thing that I remember vividly as I talk about the LifeWorks story was after we had done all that, talking to community leaders, Libby, Adrian, we logged a lot of hours going and talking to them. We had the effort going on with the executive directors, our Leadership Austin class, which was really, this was one of their, the issues that we really considered and worked on in Leadership Austin. But after all that, we had that big meeting at the Junior League facility, brought all these community leaders and different civic-minded people together and filled the room and made a presentation and said, this is what these 6 organizations are thinking about doing. At the time, it was 6. what do y'all think? And we got feedback. And at the end of it, Neil Kasurik, who was then the head of St. David's Foundation, did what he was so wont to do. He was the last person to raise his hand to close the deal. And he stood up and he said, "This is wonderful. You need to move forward, but you can't let us down."
Yeah.
Do you remember that message?
I do, right.
And it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's just like, the word has come on from on high,
Well, yeah, that was a Neil Kasurik moment for
It was
sure.
a Neil Kasurik moment. And it was in there. And so the point of all that is we created this momentum in a time whenever something had to happen. And also at the time you had other type of mergers that happened. I mean, SAFE was happening, Anybody Can. I mean, you had others that kind of spun out. It was a wonderful time of consolidation and people really trying to rethink what do we do with systems. Unfortunately, it had to be driven with the financial crisis.
Right. Well, what I can tell you 25 years later is though that kind of that culture and that sense of kind of being innovative, taking risks, rising to what the community needs from us is still a central part of our culture. And our work over the last few years with youth homelessness, I think, is evidence of that. Because when we were created in 1998, really the bulk of our funding, and we had, at that point, I think we merged with a $5 million budget or something like that. And at the time, United Way was about 10% of that, right? And so fast forward, I did this calculation a few years ago. So our annual budget is now something like, $28 million, right? So we've grown a lot.
Yeah.
The calculation I did a few years ago was to look at the source of dollars between 1998 and here, and it was something like $500,000 of our
of all the budget
all the budgets still exist within the organization. So that says something about how the landscape changed, how government funds change, how United Way funds change. We received a fraction of the United Way funds that we did that. And that's not to criticize United Way at all. They've taken a very different focus and track over the last 25 years and have worked, more exclusively with early childhood, which, we don't, that's just a small piece of what we do. But, I think, gosh, if we hadn't made that move and evolved, we couldn't have been here for the community as we are now. Kind of another track of our evolution is, in 1998, just a pretty small percentage of what we were doing had to do with housing youth. We did some shelter for youth, we did some street outreach for youth, but we didn't do as much housing, and that is a very large part of what we're doing now. Not just at a within the organizational level, but we have a systemic role in the, we have created with our partners in the community a system of care for youth experiencing homelessness. And we wouldn't have been in a position in 1998 to create a system for any piece of it.
No.
Great service provider, but really going to the level of a leader in a system of care has been a journey over the last 25 years. But a piece of the journey that I want to talk to you about, because this has been so much of your leadership since your time with LifeWorks, is recovery for youth and transition age adults. So this is a piece we absolutely struggle with still to this day. And I would like for you to talk a little bit about kind of the work you've done over the last 10 plus years with the system in Austin, and we can maybe back and forth on that a little bit.
And I'm going to start with this because it's very pertinent. I want to start with commending LifeWorks in terms of the narrowing of its focus, because about everything that I've been involved in since has dealt. And I did a long stint with the art museum, which is a little bit different because it's not human. It's social type focus, but still some overlap. But anyway, has dealt with systems of care or trying to establish systems of care. And my observation with a quarter of a century look back is it's got to be narrow, because there's just too many forces to cause something not to work.
Yeah.
And so LifeWorks is to be commended to really focus on youth homelessness, because it gave you a very narrow focus within which to work, and it was also one that was critical to the overall success of any system that goes out of it, which you know. But back to your question to me, and it's the same as, as we begin to look at issues for people suffering from substance use disorder, housing, mental health support services. I mean, there are all these wraparound things that are needed that just simply aren't provided. And in the way we would characterize it is it's really a bunch of mom and pop industries that are out there trying to serve the people who deal with this disease. And nothing is organized. It's funded terribly. Mm-hmm. And so our efforts, which have not been successful to date, COVID did not help, but was to begin to start focusing on the creation of systems of care for youth, having a substance use disorder. In Austin, we have had different pieces. We have a sober high school and university high school here in town. You had different alternative peer groups for youth, which have been very good, Keystone and PDAP. We have Center for Students in Recovery at the University of Texas. I mean, you have different types of programs. What's missing? Housing's missing. Wraparound mental health services are missing. So for a while, one of the efforts that we worked on very diligently was trying to locate and basically construct a facility in West Campus mm-hmm. that could have multiple purposes. One is, everything related to youth, locate University High School there, both high school students. We don't have any boarding right now except for in sober homes for youth who are in recovery, who are coming out of treatment. That we don't have any youth sober homes, so to speak. So try to provide that. Try to provide housing for youth in college who are in recovery. The capital lift on doing that is so extremely high. We just were never able to get over the hump. And it was different than LifeWorks because we didn't have that coming together of all these different organizations to really make it happen. That's still needed today. But what we did do, literally 2 weeks before COVID hit, was we did merge 3 different organizations.
Right.
And we had a big event.
I forgot, you've done this since LifeWorks.
We've done it again. We did it again. And we merged Austin Recovery, which is the oldest nonprofit recovery center in Central Texas, along with University High School and with Keystone Alternative Peer Group. And the idea was that we'd bring them together and we would primarily focus on youth and really start to try to build a system of care. We merged on February the 28th of 2020, and on March the 14th of 2020, COVID hit. And we ultimately, after 2 years, had to shutter Austin Recovery. So now we still have Keystone and University High School, but we're in a position where we need to start going back again. And the key and what was so wonderful about LifeWorks coming together is it brought these different organizations that could be as the first building block of creating a system of care, and that's just such a heavy lift. And I have not seen the community support for those types of initiatives like we had back in 25 years ago, when you had not only LifeWorks but SAFE and others going on at the same time.
Yeah, I think I look back and I look at the key community leaders who, including you and Libby and the folks we've talked about, and on the SAFE and Kelly and Laura Wolf, mm-hmm. and all of those folks who just we just made it our mission to again talk constantly about this and just build the network of support that was needed.
And even while those 2 mergers were going on, we had meetings with SAFE, with what mm-hmm. ultimately became the SAFE Lines, and we were meeting and comparing notes and trying to figure out how we could learn from each other. They ended up signing a deal before we were, mm-hmm. but I mean that was a wonderful time. And we had community support coming from everywhere. I frankly haven't seen that, anything approaching that level of community support since. Yeah. And I think that is a real need in this community, in any community, frankly.
So that's one of the leadership calls for
that
us,
is a leadership call I'm making right now. And I mean, it's not for lack of trying. Mm-hmm. I think that I think one of the things, Austin has transformed a lot since then.
So let's talk about that for a second, right. Because I came of professional age, mid-90s, where my sense was there was, Austin was a lot smaller. There was one philanthropic set and a set of galas that we all went to, including the Academy Awards Gala, which you were a part of founding, but helped fund Child and Family Service and really helped usher in kind of a modern age of philanthropy in Austin. But as industry and wealth has diversified and the population of Austin has exploded, there's people I talk to in philanthropy who are new to Austin are challenged with how to get connected, how to invest, and how to find kind of their civic or philanthropic home. So there's not the sense of connection that there was in the mid-90s. That's my sense.
I agree 100%. Number one. And number two is I think our work lives are different. And the import of that is I think, as you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion, it took us a lot of time. It was having a second job.
Yeah.
And you probably as well, although you were employed in the business. I mean, I still had a legal process going on, but I probably spent more time working on LifeWorks matters than I did practicing law.
Yeah, I believe.
And today, that's a rarity. And I think we do find people, fortunately, but to be able to have it en masse, I think it's very difficult. And if you have to depend on just people writing checks, which is nice, having that personal human commitment of time is frankly what makes these happen.
Right.
And I've seen a dearth of that for a couple of decades, frankly. And then there are not many people who really are willing to devote their time, talent, and labor to doing these types of initiatives and efforts, which are critically needed to the same degree as before. And I think it's because of the demands of the workplace.
Mm-hmm. No.
And I don't know, I think you have different funding decisions being made. We were going from a time, just to acknowledge, at that time where large foundations giving on a regular basis, covering operating expenses on a regular basis. There's understand the downside of doing that, but there was, now it's a lot more. We're going to give here for a while. We're going to move here for a while, and so you got a lot more.
So the sustainability
and
is challenging.
Not sustainability, and I think that's changed as well.
Yeah,
and all of that disrupts what needs to happen. So we become more reliant on government money, which is also fickle.
Mm-hmm. It's all fickle.
Yeah, it's all fickle.
It's all fickle, but it's also all productive. If one of the things, and then we've talked about this a little bit over the years for LifeWorks is, and one of the points of the merger was let's diversify the funding base, right? And, we've gone in different directions with that over the years, but, you want to diversify, but you don't want to over-diversify, because I also see organizations just really kind of, self-destruct over being too complex. Yeah. And we're pretty complex at LifeWorks, but we've decided we're going to be really good at two different things. We're going to be really good at public contracts, acquisition and management. And if we're really good at that, then, we get to align with sources that meet our mission and meet our core values. We're also going to be really good at philanthropy. Mm-hmm. We could make a decision to get really good at insurance and Medicaid reimbursement, but, that's something over the years we look at and we're like, wow, that's a whole other back office, mm-hmm. right? So that's been less of an emphasis. We've definitely made efforts in stride, but it's been less of an emphasis because we want to contain the complexity and focus on what can get dollars in the door to serve the community most effectively and most sustainably for what it is. Because it's rare that we will take on a public contract that is less than 5 years now, because the ramp up and the ramp down from it is considerable. Some of that we can't help. Some of it's baked into policy, but we have to have a pretty solid assurance that this is going to be here for a few years.
That's great, and you can do that with government
mm-hmm.
contract. You can't necessarily do that with philanthropic dollars.
No, you can't. But to your point though about relationships, that's definitely the turn of our philanthropy. And I'm going to mention again Libby Malone and her mentorship of the organization. And she started a fantastic event for the organization, the Academy Awards Gala. We really don't do many events anymore. Yeah. We do an annual luncheon. because, with Libby's teaching and everything, it is all about spending your time developing relationships with donors and you really calling in, as you mentioned, that personal time to the mission. So you just got this core of folks out there who know who we serve, who know what the vulnerabilities are, what the potentials are, know who we are as an organization as we serve. And, you have economies that go up and down, but you have a core group of folks that will, support you over, in your case, decades.
Yeah, right.
And so that's a long game strategy.
That is true.
But it is, I worry about organizations who want to raise money in the kind of the quick win approach, right? And that's, everybody loves a great success story of something that goes viral or, the bracelet that works or what have you. But the real long game strategy, and I think LifeWorks bears this out, is the time you spend developing community relationships. We know this on our service end, on the client end. We know that everything we do in our organization, be it shelter or counseling, is relationship-based, right? But it's the same. It's true at the organizational level. The care we put into developing relationships with our employees, with our external community, is what sustains the organization.
And you've been very successful at it.
I think it's been a good quarter century. Not always easy, right? Always challenging, yeah. But always, and again, I credit just the spirit of our founding and the sense of responsibility to always be evolving to be what we need for the community is something that's endured in our culture. And I just really credit our the founding group with instilling that in the organization. It
was a fun time, and I want to go back and second though in terms of the LifeWorks history is that I think the other thing that's been a real key to LifeWorks success has been that laser-like focus on a particular issue. I think that was brilliant when y'all did that, and it had to be scary. I didn't participate in that part, but when it occurred, I was like, wow. And now having tried to not replicate, but to do the same type of thing in other contexts, I realized two things. One is the necessity of having, particularly when you're talking about developing a system of care and a very clear laser-like focus. And number two, having one that has not gone as well. We could blame it on COVID, but really I think the other thing that I think is necessary is to be able to have developed that base of support from which to draw, which goes back to the founding, right?
Right.
How do you bring all that how does any other organization bring all that together, I think, is the riddle.
Yeah.
But it sure was it was a special time. 20 years ago, a special time.
Well, and you'll remember one of actually, I think it was the largest program that folded into LifeWorks was a adult consumer credit counseling program. And it was, for a while, it was like a big moneymaker, right? Mm-hmm. We funded other programs with that. And a few years in, we had two things going on. We're like, we're kind of a youth organization with an adult consumer credit, and that doesn't make much sense. We were also kind of hit with a lot of competition from the private sector on that, to the point where we're like, well, we could spend a lot of time competing on that, or we can just admit and say, hey, we're a youth service organization, and this doesn't fit anymore. And we divested from that, which was incredibly scary.
But very important to the long-term health of the organization.
Absolutely. And, we got out at a time where we were able to sell it. And I think it's the only time, other than a hard asset, I've been able to sell anything in my career, right? You don't sell stuff in the nonprofit sector unless it's like a physical asset, right? So I just remember thinking, wow, we just got away with something big here. And now we can, flow to this counseling program, or, hold this money in reserve for, the first capital campaign that expanded our emergency shelter, right? So,
well, we just, with what we ended up doing with Austin Recovery is very similar, because we ended up having a recovery center out southeast of Judah, and we ended up selling it to a for-profit treatment center, and we were able to put some money in the bank, and so everything is shrunk. As the economy begins to recover, you still have the youth organizations, which is the focus. And I think that it provides opportunities. I mentioned the art. And so really, I guess what the point here I want to make is just, I think it's important for organizations to really evaluate, where they are, not only financially, but in terms strategically,
Yeah.
and to make those tough decisions. I mean, the other thing that had the fortune of being involved in was, with the Austin Museum of Art,
Right.
which we ended up doing a merger there with Art House and created the Contemporary, right? And then and we owned the downtown block and ended up selling it to the county. So what happened in that merger is you had, all of a sudden we had the makings of the beginning of an endowment, which neither had really ever had, and you had a small museum in the Jones Art Center, and you had Laguna Gloria.
And look at it now.
And now look at it now, and it's got a very focused mission, and it's beginning to really thrive again. Or not beginning, it is thriving again. And so, making those transformative moves and being very strategic. And again, I the more I'm able to look at things, and again, back to the LifeWorks story, I'm very proud of what we did earlier on. I'm equally as proud of what I didn't participate in for LifeWorks, and that is a narrowing in that focus. I'm reiterating that because I think that was a very appropriate, bold, but spot on, correct move.
So let's wrap up with a question that I might put I ask everybody this, but I may put a slightly different twist on it for you.
Sure.
Which is, we always end by talking about legacy and what legacy you want to be a part of with LifeWorks, and that's what we've been talking about, right? The legacy of the sharpening of the focus and the impact, the creation of a system of care. So let's talk a little more broadly with you, and I want to loop back to the work with recovery and youth and young adults. What's the legacy that we're looking at?
So let me talk about what's missing.
Yeah. Because that'll be the leadership call.
That's the leadership call, and it really is. I mean, it's what's LifeWorks has done a phenomenal job of providing opportunities and housing for youth experiencing homelessness, and educational opportunities. I mean, the breadth of what LifeWorks has done is phenomenal. The mental health supports, I can speak from the substance use side of things, it's not systematized.
Right.
The systems of care that we purportedly have in this community really don't support youth worth a damn, quite frankly, and secondly, they're disparate. And for all the reasons LifeWorks came together, because young people have got to run from one place to another, and still try to work and make it all happen. It's a disparate, ad hoc system that simply does not work, and that needs to be refined and needs to be focused. And then we need to have, and the other piece, which I think y'all are building, on LifeWorks campuses, but it's communities to be able to support them, and the community of the people that actually are involved there. And so, frankly, if we're doing community call-outs or whatever, but I mean, I really would not, we need to have this community come together and say, let's take what LifeWorks has, let's find a way to provide the mental health supports that are needed, the other educational supports. I mean, Austin Recovery, still has University High School that can be used for more than just kids in recovery, right, that are in high school. And find a way to be able to, to get those fully integrated. And then to provide services up until early adulthood, which if we're really wanting to break the cycle on either issue, homelessness or substance use disorder, we've got to be able to provide a runway for young people to land on, and I think that we're not quite there yet, and so and that's hard because you're also dealing with governmental institutions that are embedded. They're slow to move like an aircraft carrier, and they have their own culture, and they're safe because they're governmental entities. And we got to shake that up a lot.
Yeah, and I think too, not just governmental entities, but multiple that don't necessarily intersect, right? So if you're sitting in the middle of an education system, mental health system, homelessness response system, child welfare system, any one of those is really hard to be nimble, but aligning all is It takes a lot. So that's the work. That's
That
the
is
work
the
we have
work.
to do.
And it's difficult work, but it's needed. And because that's the piece that's missing. And therefore we've got, and I hate to put it in these terms because it's a negative term, but so we have societal ills, to use the term that people use, that continue on longer than they need to, simply because we as a community aren't willing to step up and say, how do we integrate this and make it work?
Yeah. And make the tough changes necessary within systems.
And that's
so
the
they
key.
work. Put the people in the middle.
Yeah. It is to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
And to break some glass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, that's what's required. I mean, that's what birthed LifeWorks. I mean, that's where all that came from. And again, I would go on to say, because I think it's important to realize what else happened during that 25 years ago, is you also had other initiatives that came along at the same time. So it actually birthed some of the organizations that today are lauded in this community. LifeWorks, of course, being one of them. SAFE being another. I mean, so it becomes contagious. Why? Because it is the right thing to do. And we really do. That's needed. That's needed badly in this community. I see kids struggling, and it goes on for a period of time, and then things break, and you're starting all over again.
So I think we've seeded the legacy for the next 25 years.
I'll be a part of it. I don't know if I'll be here for 25, but
we'll expedite this one. How's that?
I tell you.
We'll condense it to the 10-year plan based on everything we've learned.
There you go.
Over the last 25. Lynn, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you for joining us. I think we've had a lot of talk about legacy and what can happen just by stepping forward in leadership, taking the chances, breaking a few things, but then never being satisfied, always keeping an eye on what needs to be done next. So that's a note we'll leave off on today. What needs to be next?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lives We Love podcast. For more information about LifeWorks and how you can help, please visit lifeworksaustin.org.